Well, for more on Mexico's election results, I'm joined by Remi Piet. He's a director at America's Market Intelligence. Welcome, Remi.
Pleasure.
Now, President-elect Lopez Obrador, or AMLO, was considered the front-runner in the run-up to the election, but how surprised were you by how decisive his victory was?
Well, his victory was actually very impressive. I mean, it's when you're looking at it, he won with more than 50%, 53% in a one-round election, meaning that every single other candidate, if they were put together, would not have been able to reach the level of votes that he has received. It's actually a first in the modern history here in Mexico. First of all, we had 70 years of ruling of one party called the Partido Revolucionario Institucional, and then the other president since the year 2000 only barely won for the election with 36%. Right now, we have a president that is actually very strongly elected, who's going to get a large majority in Congress, and also because there was election at the city level and province level, is going to get a series of governor on his side and ruling key cities such as Mexico City today, where there's for the first time a woman has been elected as the mayor of Mexico City, a very impressive woman, to be able to carry and implement forward a platform that is going to be new in Mexico. It's the first time that we're having a left-wing president.
So talk more about the platform that he ran on and why it resonated so well with voters.
Well, there's a feeling here that the last decade has been a lost decade in terms of corruption, in terms of facing insecurity all around the country. You have a large count of death and very key stories where you can see that there was a clientelism, there was an impossibility from the government to implement policies to clean the society of corruption and insecurity. So now you have the population looking towards AMLO that run on a campaign of trying to provide more support to the poorest level of society, trying to protect indigenous communities, elderlies, raise pensions, the policy that some people call populist, obviously, but when you think about it, the level of life here is very low in Mexico. There's a very large element of inequalities between a bourgeoisie and a very small caste of very wealthy people, and a large size of the population that is very poor. So the idea of trying to raise the standard of living to this majority of the population could actually serve the economy down the road, because it's going to be reconsumed inside the economy of local production. Now, that's going to be interesting to look at the impact that it will have on NAFTA negotiation, because I tend to believe that AMLO is going to get a more protectionist perspective than its predecessor on this.
So given that perspective then, what would you say are the biggest strengths and weaknesses in the economy that he's inheriting?
Well, it's an economy that has been built on clientelism, maybe lack of efficiency of key sectors. There's, however, an educated population here, but there's lack of perspective for the younger population towards being able to move forward inside different corporations. Now, the key issue is to see whether AMLO is going to be increasing regulations in important sectors such as the energy sector or mining sector, natural resources, that might actually scare away international investors. If it's the case, then Mexico is going to have a hard time trying to be able to sustainably harvest or exploit resources, or be able to create the jobs that are also needed in the country. I mean, Mexico has a very low level of unemployment, but also you need to be able to provide more quality jobs, more jobs that will create the possibilities of generation of companies and local companies for the future of the country.
Now, Remi, we saw the peso fall and the dollar strengthen as the celebratory mood shifted to uncertainty about future economic policy. What do we know about how much the new president will shake up the country's economy?
Well, AMLO actually has tried to prevent this from the start. He has unveiled a list of 16 potential ministers of his government, although he's only going to be in power in December. So usually this period of 6 months between the election and the moment that the newly elected president steps into office is the opportunity to try to strike some deals and alliances with other parties. In this case, he's been very straightforward of telling who are going to be the main members of his parliament. The election of AMLO has not been a surprise, because the polls were actually very clear in showcasing his future victory, so the market were aware of this. Now the question is to know whether AMLO is going to turn towards a Lula or a Chavez. When AMLO was the mayor of Mexico City, he actually was implemented policies that were also pro-business, allowed to increase the investment in the country and in the city of Mexico DF. And so as a result, we tend to believe that actually the increased regulation of the policies towards the private sector will not be as harsh as most of the negative market forces would believe and tend to be afraid of.
All right, thank you so much. Remi Piet there of America's Market Intelligence.